What if I told you that more millionaires are going to be made over the next year than were actually made over the last 10 years? You think to yourself, I'm absolutely crazy. Over the course of this next video, I'm basically going to tell you how those businesses are going to be structured to get to the big milli. Let's get it. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to position your business in 2026 to get so you can get the highest chances of making the most money. And if your ambition, because not everybody's ambition is to make the big milli, if your ambition is to do that, basically I'm going to teach you how to do it by using other people's money. So who am I? My name is Ben Kofi, aka Credit Kofi. I teach you guys about business funding. I'm a business funding specialist. Moreover, I teach you guys the cool rules that they don't teach you at school, so you can use the system and not let the system use you. Let's get it. So if you want to make the big money moolah bling and ka-ching in 2026 and you're in the United States of America and you have a small business, basically your time is now. It doesn't necessarily start with a logo. It doesn't necessarily start with an LLC, but it starts with positioning yourself correctly and knowing what funding you're eligible for and preparing yourself for that funding, okay? Because a lot of people out there think funding is funding is funding, or a loan is a loan is a loan. No, there are different loans that are applicable to different types of entrepreneurs. So let's begin the 2026 business boom. So here's the extreme truth that nobody is really talking about in 2026. Now, there's going to be the biggest transfer of wealth, okay, that the world has ever seen since 2008. Now, we all remember 2008, the massive crash, Lehman Brothers, etc., etc. All these businesses that have been around for decades basically went into liquidation. So let's crush it. Let's prepare for it. Let me give you some of the steps. So you might be thinking to yourself, how is this happening? It's happening through an economy shift, basically through AI adoption, remote work, consumer behavior, consumer patterns are basically reshaping industries in the United States of America. If you've been sleeping under a rock recently, you probably would have known that. So all in all, what does that mean? That means new markets are opening up. Old markets are basically collapsing. Capital is basically flowing in a completely different way, and competition is shifting at mega lightning speed. So you don't enter 2026 or begin off 2026 as an amateur or a beginner, basically you need to build a foundation, and that foundation starts with funding. Now, entrepreneurs who basically start out and deploy funding or get hold of funding and know how to deploy it fast, they're the ones that basically dominate the market. Those guys who cannot, or entrepreneurs that cannot, basically can't. The fatal business mistakes that owners make. Now, there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that basically lose before they even start, okay? Now, why am I saying this? They make deadly mistakes when it comes to building their business. They build their business with their own money. Now, don't get me wrong, bootstrapping and starting off with your own money isn't necessarily a fatal mistake, because that's how I started. I was in e-commerce, I bought stock, I built up, but eventually I took on credit, okay? So when I say it's a fatal mistake, take it with a pinch of salt, but don't take it with a pinch of salt. At some point in time, you are going to need to take on funding. You're going to need to know where to get that funding from and how to structure that funding, or moreover, structure your credit profile in order to grab a hold of that funding. So moreover, it's about understanding leverage. Now, basically what happens is when you use your own money, this is what happens. So first and foremost, you limit your growth, you limit your speed, you limit the options that you have, and you cannot take, or moreover, you do take 100% of the risk. Now, on the other hand, when you use funding, you can scale faster, you can hire faster, you can market faster, you can test ideas without draining your own savings, and you can protect your own cash flow. So the people who are going into 2026 not understanding funding, they're basically building a house without a foundation that's going to be knocked over by a hurricane. 2026, your main weapon as an entrepreneur is understanding how the landscape of funding works. The one thing that you must start doing right now. Now, here's the thing, it might be a shocking thing to you guys. You can actually secure funding pretty easy, okay? Now, why do I say that? So your main asset in all of this is your credit profile and making sure you're in a position where you're fundable. So you don't necessarily need to wait until you launch your business. You can start engineering and building your credit profile right here, right now, making sure you've got the right credit profile and it not being too thin. So looking at things like utilization, looking at things like your debt to income ratio, okay? Looking at your credit score, okay? Paying off things, not cancelling cards too early, because you need that longevity. Okay, now by that being your foundation, you can basically go in for funding further along the line, because the fact that you've built up this foundation in order to get what you need. So the one thing that decides whether or not you win or you lose in 2026, okay, it's not necessarily your marketing campaign, it's not necessarily the people who are in your business, it's about whether or not you can secure the funding in order to compete with others. Okay, because the fact of the matter is, if you're competing with others using your own pocket, okay, fair enough, in the initial stages maybe, but as you go along, basically you're beaten already. Your competitors basically have lines of credit. Your competitors are using SBA loans. Your competitors are using MCA loans. Your competitors are stacking funds, using capital stacking. They're using 0% interest credit cards. There is no way in the world, in the United States of America, that you can compete if you're just using your own funds, because remember, your own funds are limited. Banks literally create money from keystrokes out of nowhere. They lend it to you at interest. Fair enough, if you're a startup, you can get 0% interest for 6, 12, 18 months, even up to 24 months. Imagine having access to money, let's say 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, 0%, as opposed to using your own money. That's powerful. So the real business owners, what they're going to do, they're going to basically walk into 2026 with power. They're going to be using credit. Okay, they're going to be using various different funding options. They're going to be using capital reserves. They're going to be accessing the bank's money. Okay, they're not necessarily going to be bootstrapping. Okay, they're not going to be using debit cards. They're not going to be using savings accounts. Facts. Your idea won't fail. Your effort won't fail. Your dream won't fail. Your lack of funding will lead you to either failure or success.